heard really superficial arguments of people say, well, if this thing just keeps going up, then you're telling me that it's going to be $10 million a Bitcoin? Like, how could that possibly be a viable candidate to be used in the economy? And and I know that this is about the breakdown and the failure of fiat and this becoming the replacement, because at a certain point, if you go back to Germany in the 1920s and you talk about the paper mark, well, yeah, you had $100 trillion paper marks to be equal to 1 ounce of gold or whatever the crazy number ended up being. At a certain point, that measuring stick of that fiat currency that's in circulation breaks down and it holds no meaning at all, because if you have an infinite supply of fiat currency, the value of that infinite supply is zero.
That's absolutely right. And I would argue too that is by design. Fiat currencies self-annihilate over time by design, right? Again, it's this mechanism for creating wealth inequality selectively. There's no equitable economic benefit to printing money whatsoever, right? It is only beneficial to those that can do it, that can monopolize its production.
I would also argue that when decision makers decide to start using a fiat currency, and correct me if you disagree with this, but it's because there's a short-term interest that has to be served at the expense of the long-term interest.
100%.
Yeah.
They're trying to paper over bad decision-making, right?
Yeah.
They have holes in their P&L that any free market participant would be forced to deal with the consequences for. They'd be held accountable to their own actions. Fiat currency gives government an ability to confiscate from the rest of us to paper over their past mistakes.
Yeah.
And that's what creates this bureaucratic bloat we see in the world. So the question becomes, with fiat currency designed to self-annihilate, right? And this is not hyperbole. A quick study of history, every fiat currency throughout history has failed, right? The two exceptions are the US dollar and the British pound, just because those are the ones operating right now. Every other fiat currency throughout history has failed. The question becomes, what's next? What replaces the US dollar as the preeminent world reserve currency, right? Do we go back to gold? Is there another superpower? Is China going to take the throne? Or is there the possibility that, like the free market we saw historically, zeroing in on this neutral, apolitical settlement layer called gold, is there the possibility that this new technology that has perfected all of the properties we know of money, perfected divisibility, durability, recognizability, portability, and scarcity, we know the governments, there's no conceivable way that they can shut it down. There's a huge incentive for them to adopt it and front run it. Is there the possibility that the world will shift back to its free market roots and adopt digital gold as the base money for a global digital non-state economy? That's the bet on Bitcoin.